Good morning and welcome back. This is the Morning Connection. We're live at the Ligani Club and we are very pleased to welcome to our table Prophet Greg. Um, Pastor Percival, you want to bless the Prophet before we...
I mean, bless him. He said he was going to start with a prayer.
No, with your voice.
So you mean? So you mean?
Talk to him.
Yeah, man.
Before.
Good morning. We had a conversation 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, about that.
2 weeks ago. So welcome this morning, sir. How are you doing today?
Well, it's a special occasion, 56th anniversary, going through Haile Selassie's first international visit to Jamaica. You know, we really keeping up that energy of celebration. So it is good to be here, and I give thanks to the Morning Connection, you both, Sister Minute and Pastor Percy.
She has a Prophet Percy.
Yeah, bad.
Yes.
So inviting,
Prophesy on you.
yeah, man, for keeping the energies going strong, especially the bold step you did to support us in the Rastafari History Month or Rastafari Month for the month of April. Very significant indeed to really help push the, a good understanding of the culture and even the works and mission of Rastafari. So this is a very bold step, I must agree, and I give thanks to be on the Morning Connection. Not stranger to the best 100 FM, but
Family, yes.
yeah, but glorifying that and really and truly, in the spirit of Rastafari, I love to really start, the whole energy of today with they say eyes is what it's just a little prayer. We usually chant Psalm 133. So, in the spirit of Rastafari, we say, behold how good and pleasant it is for our brethren and sisters to dwell together in unity and love. It's like the precious ointment upon the head that ran it down the beard. Even the patriarch high priest Aaron's beard that went down to the skirts of his garment. It is like the dew of Hermon, and as the dew that descended upon the holy mountains of Zion. For there the Lord God hath commanded his blessings, even love and life forevermore. So all praises unto the power of the Trinity, Emperor Haile Selassie the First, Jah, Rastafari, one who ought to be feared. And we must say a blessings to also his Empress, to have the balance Empress Menin asked for, as it was the first time in the during the coronation and the descending lineage of King David coming to the Emperor, who is the 225th descended monarch, that such a coronation that honored both the Emperor and the Empress being crowned together in November. So it's a very auspicious occasion to even glorify the strength of the woman to come on board. Very good. So you were saying, who is Prophet Greg?
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that you wanted to know about the turban business and thing. But I would definitely start off by saying I'm a member of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress, Church of Salvation, with our founding leader, we say the priest of the Most High, King Emmanuel Charles and Edward. So my name, Prophet, is actually the office of the Prophet that operates within the Congress portfolio, having the role to deal with statical matters, because the Prophets, there are two banners within the Congress. One is the Marcus Messiah Garvey banner, the red, black, and green, that signify, because we know Rastafari hails him as the Prophet forward, and of course the churchical aspect of the Congress. So that is in short my significance in being the membership of the Congress in going forward. So the tradition that we have is actually the turban and robe that comes from way back ancient Israel time during Moses and Aaron, as you said, the skirt of his garment. So the turban and robe tradition is what was resurrected, a very special time we are in, where the culture is concerned, having gone through the pangs of colonialism and slavery. So this is how the Rastafari movement, in its awakening, rebirth, actually goes back beyond colonialism to identify our cultural identity as the Black House of Israel, traditionally with our locks, if you can refer to Leviticus chapter 21, Leviticus 19. These are the sort of identity, the culture appears with in our ancient tradition. I should say also we are more actively now is director and executive director of the Ethio-Africa Diaspora Union Millennium Council, sitting in as the general secretary currently. But I'm also
You
this.
have the field general, man.
Aye.
You bring it together.
Documents and the whole things to be in portfolio legal,
Okay,
in representation, because we were registered in 2007 as an indigenous culture,
Okay.
within the whole energies of intellectual property right to really safeguard the ownership of the culture that has been appropriated over the years.
So I'm going to direct your mind to some of the governance issues that arise in your, I'm going to say tribe for the time being, tribe and faith.
Okay.
But the first thing I want to ask you is just to clarify for me that there is no separation between church and state in your culture.
No, well, basically, the movement, the spiritual liberator movement, actually began as the faith, and it is a culture that evolved out of the faith. So
specifically, the way that there is no church leader at the helm of our state organ. This is now Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
You operating in the office of the prophet is the first plank of your authority as a prophet.
Yes,
then you also carry some civil functions.
Mm-hmm.
You are the secretary for the
Ethio-Africa Diaspora Union Millennium
for the
Council.
council.
In short, Rastafarian Millennium Council.
Right. So you're the secretary for the council, and you are a director. Is
as
it
well.
the same of the same council or of another?
No, man, the same council.
The same council.
Executive
so you're a director
director.
and you're a director and secretary.
Right.
So you operating in the office of the prophet, resurrecting the traditional role of the prophet in the Old Testament days.
Well, it is the role of the Congress. There's a Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress. That is the portfolios of the prophets and the priests.
So is that a political organization?
No, man. It is an organization that if you look at the credence of it, that we stand churchical, sabbatical, statical, in the sense of the redemption of the African race. So it is an incorporation of both church and
there's
states.
unity.
So there is unity.
Absolutely. That's what I wanted to clarify.
in actioning for the cause and the mission of Rastafari.
So the philosophy, the politics, and the spirituality are wrapped up.
It's all wrapped up. It's a holistic connection, and we will even look into it in some more depth as we study His Imperial Majesty the role, because obviously the whole energy surrounds the emperor, that the divinity as how it is manifesting. I'm also the spokesperson for the council for repatriation and reparation. Had the honor of making a presentation in St. Vincent's and Grenadines in 2013, addressing CARICOM, first conference against reparation. Did an article recently last year.
First conference for reparation?
Yeah, for reparation.
Not against, you were...
No, man, for.
Okay,
for.
that's why I was clarifying.
Yeah, I give thanks for that. But it's a statical finally coming together based on the Durban conference that was in South Africa, United Nations World Conference Against Racism, that took place in Durban, South Africa, 2001, and the 168 nations that signed on were mandated to carry out the continuity of the plan of action. So hence CARICOM formalized it under the leadership at that time, Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent's of the Grenadines. So that was the first conference in 2013 that was collectively done by this, the CARICOM government. So we had the honor and privilege to make a presentation there.
Yeah.
And I should say, as I said, in support of the same movement, the Caribbean Reparation Center, we are affiliated and on board. We did a a publication, I should say, last year on the same matter. And
That's who, P.J. Patterson.
no, man, it's to deal with the same reparation, but
Right,
it's
at
I
the
think
CARICOM level.
I think it's Professor Varian Shepherd and
Shepherd.
Hillary
Beckles.
Beckles that's more in control of that
Alright.
setting.
So-
So we did a publication last year in support of the same struggle for reparation as
So,
well.
from the days of Leonard P. Howell, the Rastafarians have understood and fought for priority being given to this issue of reparations. And you have also, in forming your church, combined the functions of state and church for governance of your people.
Yes, the fundamental human rights for self-determination.
Absolutely, which is across the board for everyone. Pastor Percival, because I now have two churchmen,
You have
what
two
do you
churchmen.
think about this union of state and church? Is that something that we should even be desiring on the larger stage?
Church and state. Well, in God's mind, there is no separation, really. Because everything, as you people often hear me say, begins in the spirit, then it has a manifestation in the world. So people ask, what is your worldview? I'm saying, my worldview is Christian. And in God, there's no division.
No division of the two.
There's no
Yes.
division of
In
the
fact,
two.
that would be the clearest demonstration of integrity.
There's no division. So we are now a kingdom of kings and priests, according to
Exactly.
Peter.
Even Moses started it in Exodus 19.
Right. So that's where it really
Tradition.
begins. Yeah. And so, from your point of view, and some people say, no, man, church must be there.
Stay over there, so.
And, the
And
things
or
that
at
are
home.
go- Yeah,
Some
but-
people say it's private and personal,
yeah,
and
but-
it should be.
But your philosophy and your worldview comes out of your spirituality.
Yes.
Because if you believe that there is a God, then it must manifest in how you live your life.
Exactly.
And so you can't continue to separate it. It's what leads to schizophrenia, division of mind. But anyway,
But I think the emphasis of that should even go forward to even the 10 Commandments that was issued. 6 days work, 7-day rest, church and state.
Yes.
It is right there in the
It's right
commandments.
there.
So
It is
you
part
know,
of the
it's
original
just
design.
yes, the reality
Yeah.
is just how the concept of world governments come in and separate church and state because of obviously power, and you see the manifestation, especially in these times, which we can probably
So
mention
on
as
that
well.
issue of the unified church and state, we in this colonial hotspot have a head of state who is, member of the Royal House of Windsor
Yes.
monarchy in Britain. For the Rastafarian, not so. Your
Certainly
allegiance,
not.
and I say your, really meaning ours, because we are one. But you have chosen to fight for and to align yourself in a certain way, spiritually and politically, and you've been advocating that Jamaica, all Africans, all persons of African descent in Jamaica should, now that we are no longer enslaved by the Queen, we should seek to have a particular alignment. I want to move from what we've been talking about, unified church and state, into what is the state and church that you see black people of Jamaica? Where should we be pointing our attention now that the Queen of England is losing her dominance and her position?
All right, that's a very good question, because in our presentation, the significance of the visits of the emperor also wraps itself around that reality, because we want to study the historic, the prophetical, and even what it means constitutionally, the visits of the emperor, because let us just reflect on that special occasion in 1966 in April. This is the actually day, but the month before 1966, the Queen visit Jamaica, and it is like it's an insignificant situation, because all what is going about, even the whole Rastafarian issue, was based on the visits of His Imperial Majesty, that we had to be defensive and be reactive to what was being. So why I'm saying it is wrapped around, when the Queen visited 1966, she stayed in her yacht. So the only one who incorporate
March.
the people was the emperor the next month who stayed at King's house
And who stood on the land.
and stood on the land, visited his people clearly. And but if we can touch on it a little later, but the significance of the parliamentary speech that he made in delivering that note, he reclaimed the people of Jamaica to say, no, we are of African blood. We are unified under blood, that descendancy. So the whole monarchy of Commonwealth gone through the door with that. It is no royal wealth, your indigenous right, your indigenous culture. You link into your whole birthright because you have now an ancient emperor from the days of King David, even prior to that, because Ethiopia was never conquered and it is the first kingdom according to history, recorded history. Reclaiming his people and not subjects to colonialism, as how the Queen showed herself the month before. Stayed away, stretching, So there's a significant difference in the attitude towards the humane attitude of a person, because it's the first time within the history of the emperors, the kings of the emperors of Ethiopia, even when he was appointed crown prince and regent to the throne, he made the initiative to leave, because that was a no-no, for Ethiopia. They always protect the heir apparent, so they safeguard them from even going out because of the same target of quote unquote colonialism and thing, because you talk exactly.
Herod is always looking to destroy.
So he preserved that, but at the same time he uses authority to reclaim, as we said, the rebirth, the whole rebirth, because Rastafari, the whole rebirth, because he spoke that at the inauguration. So the Constitution, as how you mentioned, it is very significant that if we are going to move away, we have to embrace that
who we truly are,
and write that into the Constitution in that linking.
I rarely try to summarize what a guest says, but I would hate for the significance of what you're saying to be missed. You started off by placing yourself in and I want to welcome Maxine Stowe to the table. One, she's looking real rootsy. Usually she looks regal. She look rootsy this morning.
She look like Joseph with the multicolored coats this morning, right, Max? Same way.
So, in a way, my recap is also so our guests or additional guests can come right up to the where we are. You started by placing yourself in the office of the prophet, reminding us of our own Old Testament rules and tradition, the roots of and you have emphasized the unity of state and church. Happily so, with pastor's own comment that is the design. In the Father's eyes there is no separation. Man is one in spirit and in his corporeal self. So having taken us to an understanding that we speak from one platform when it comes to church and state, you've touched on the origin of the philosophy, the awakening, as you've put it, of Rasta, to the knowledge that we came from Africa. We are tied to a dynasty, the Black House of Israel, you've called it. And most significantly, at the time when the Queen cut us loose, she visited in March 4 years later. She stayed on her yacht somewhere off the coast of Montego Bay, if I recall it.
Yes, exactly.
But the emperor came here, and he came here despite tradition and odds. And the message he brought to the Africans now released from slavery is that you have an identity. He reclaimed us, so to speak. So someone like me who sat at this very table and said, I was kidnapped and brought here, who looked for me? You're saying my father came and said, there is a place for you in my house.
And you want to know the icing on the cake?
Yes, give me the icing on the cake.
He offered Jamaica to become a member state of the Organization of the Africa Unity.
And would have been a founding member.
Political connection.
Yes. So
you
now
wouldn't want no more that reconnection than that offering.
That is true. That is solid information. So even when the Rwandan Prime Minister, President says deepen ties with Africa. That is not a new offer you would be saying.
No.
That was on the
It's
table.
already there
That was on
from
the table.
from 1966.
So do we have the boldness to claim it now that we're looking at taking the Queen out of the Constitution?
It is the people's power to do it. That is where it comes down. I mean, we have been lived and fed with this autocratic approach by politicians over the years, and the Emancipation Act that's supposed to free us, it is still woefully short of that reality. So if the people don't stand up and reclaim their identity, what their whole
birthright.
culture,
The
birthright,
birthright.
then
we
who
don't-
else-
we don't
who
be
else-
like
who else
Esau
must
who
do it?
sold it? We have the chance to recapture it.
recapture it.
Can
And
we be
because
reconnected?
it's a new. I mean, as I said before, that opportunity came to Jamaica after the dismantling of the League of Nations, the whole rising of the United Nations that recognized African states' independence, and the pulling down of this colonial system. Hence the reason why in 1956 there was this move for a Federation Act towards self-determination, who you have to
Yes,
become,
yes.
and that led to the whole West Indies Federation of 1958, which we protested against because it still wasn't looking towards total emancipation. So that whole energy should have captivated itself from that period coming forward at the re-establishing of nations as independent from colonialism, because when you crush the League of Nations, you literally crush the Berlin Conference, because that was the covenant of the League of
Nations. It was an
Nations.
opportunity for reset, which we missed, and we don't want to miss it again. We're going to
Exactly.
take our break now. Please stay with us. We've traveled a distance, but we still have some territory to cover, and I would love for you to be here when we do that. Our guest is Prophet Greg. Sister Maxine is now here also, and Pastor Percival and I are just opening up some new channels of understanding as Best FM supports the Rastafarians in celebration of their month. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are very pleased to have two family members in the house. Prophet Greg, Sister Maxine are both here. So the church is very well represented because we also have Pastor Percival. We are moving now into, I think, some deeper waters. Prophet Greg wants to start a conversation around the significance of April. It would seem to me that there is a potential clash, if you could call it that, between the choice of February as Black History Month and the necessity for April to be recognized as having special significance to Jamaicans in particular, Rastafarians specifically. Is that where you want to point our attention now?
I would say in using the terms that you have.
The clash?
No, man, not the clash. Your discourse when you're talking about the new wine in new wine skin and
we
old
have a listener,
wine.
Percival.
Yeah, man, ardent
New
listener.
wine, old
trust-
skins.
But
Yes.
we have to look also at the bad wine, because there's a significance. His Imperial Majesty speak of bad wine in the manner of how colonialism and slavery, the education, the experience, and the environment of it that has ill prepared us. So we look at that at the bad wine. And if you look going back into history, on the cross, we just come out of that era of the Passover. Them call it the Easter. We the ancient word is really the Passover.
Yeah.
They gave the bad wine to Christ, vinegar, for him to drink. So that is the bad wine and the attitude that we want to rid also. That's in the midst of
We
us.
need a detox.
Yes, from this colonialism and slavery. But the Rastafari History Month, how we initiated it began with an article, and I just want to quote something significant. The person is Gillian. She was the Wilkinson Daniel. She said, "We are very long and very. We
Is
have
she
a
Jamaican? Is this an
yeah,
article
man.
published? Right.
It's
Okay.
it was to deal with. She was a I don't know if she still is the senior director in the entertainment division in the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment, and this is from 2015, right? So I don't know if she's still there, but in championing for Kingston to become a creative city, this is basically what she had stated. We have a very long and very storied history in terms of entertainment, and so we are hopeful and we are confident, quite frankly, because we made a very strong application and we are looking forward to being designated. She noted that the team will be highlighted Jamaica's contribution over 6 genres of music to the industry. She added that the next year being the 50th anniversary of Rocksteady and of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie visit to the country, this will also form part of the discussion. So in injecting at that time, because it became recognized by UNESCO, Kingston is indeed given the creative city status. But I'm saying the creative energy, where you identify the visit of His Imperial Majesty as a part of your application, event, you're identifying the creative energy of that particular community that honors the visit of the Emperor. So as the council registered to protect intellectual property right of Rastafari Afrocentric Group, it was our duty to address this matter. And in so addressing, we say, if that is the case, and you look at it, what Rastafari was doing with the American Black History Month initiative, we took up that space in the month of April to highlight significance, what the culture is, and African, Pan-African, etc. But notice what she said, the storyline. Now, within the Rastafari history, there's hardly a storyline in the month of April that significantly impact the history and the culture of the Rastafari.
You mean in the month of February?
In the month of February.
Yes, yeah.
But we gravitate towards it because it was an opportunity to express what black people, because even the Black Lives Matters now, coming out of that whole targeting of African descent by the same stench of colonialism and state, is still a matter of concern. So in moving the reality of what the state did in recognizing the visit, we proactively reacted then to that
and came up with the month of April, because that's when
the visit of His Imperial. But even significantly, if you check the month of April, it is the ecclesiastical month of the Hebrew calendar. Abib. Passover, 3 significant. So the energy flows
out of it.
And let me just demonstrate it. If I were to ask you, Sister Minute, and even Brother Percy, Pastor Percy, what is your take on Rastafari culture? What the significance of? I mean, just give me an example. I'm just going to show you, and I want you, Brother Pastor, to just make a statement. What is it that impacts on?
I let Pastor go first because his brother was a Rastafarian.
And you just have to pick something.
But I have a clear
music.
The music. All right.
The music, and their practices, what it means in terms of culture and spirituality. All
right. So the terms of the culture and spirituality resides around the divinity and the identity of Emperor Haile Selassie I. And I was just spoken that the significance of the visit of him reclaiming this, you cannot have no more intimacy of that. And that is in the month of April. This is what I'm talking about.
Of course,
the music.
You're preaching to the choir, because we have no great affinity to February as the month in which black people are celebrated. The truth is, black people should be celebrated every day. We've earned it.
Right.
And I accept that April has some very special events around it, which makes it a fitting month.
It's a fitting.
So I believe that your choice of April is ideal, especially for the Rastafarian community. But I would say that the Emperor's visit belonged to me too, as a woman without locks and without the embracing the simple life that you have embraced. It is for all Africans, because when you tell me that he came and he said, you people who look like that, you belong to us someplace. And I am the representative that stands to reclaim you. That answers a heartfelt cry of every black person who wants to anchor themselves to the point of origin. So you've preached to the choir.
and
we're with you on the point.
You mentioned the music. Are you referring to like the reggae? Okay, we have a special Nyabingi order, but even reggae, which has now been ascribed by UNESCO very recently as an intangible cultural heritage. They had to identify the community that create the genre of reggae, which is the Rastafari community. But the first agitation, because the reggae music that came out of the culture was a liberating movement musically, when Rasta take up that,
So you asked me...
So no, I'm going to get to you, but just the answer. In 1978, a cause campaign was done to bring peace of the political rivalry. Is reggae
1978, yeah.
1978 peace that's a cause campaign that they use reggae with, and for sure say that was
importantly,
the
it was
energy,
a Rasta man.
and it's the same Rastafari.
Yeah.
So you're
you asked me how do I see Rasta?
April 78.
Yeah. To me, the Rastafarians, I see it more in a political, social consciousness perspective. I see the Rastaman as that outlier who had the sensibility about certain things relating to identity and history and place in the world, and who took it as a cause to fight for it, to carry it as a torch, to assume a distinctive identity so anyone who saw him would know that he's carrying a torch for this thing. And I feel that all Jamaica and black people everywhere are indebted to the Rastafarians for carrying that as a personal burden. And you have chosen to carry it in a way that held you separate from the things of the world that distract and confuse. So you have chosen a simple life in how you eat, in how you dress, in your philosophy. It's a little old-fashioned in some ways for me, but still I respect it.
Ancient tradition, please, not old-fashioned. Ancient tradition, please.
Ancient is even older than old-fashioned.
Yes. So we have a...
So for me, I could do it a little more. I'm more of a free thinker in that way, in terms of moving with the times with some things. But that is how I see...
I just said that...
That's how I see Rasta.
Can you be a Rasta without locks, boss?
It started that way.
And it continues that way because it's a vow. I just put it plain as if you want to know what that...
Covenant, man. We talk covenant here all the time.
In Psalm 76, if you go into that psalm, you will see the fullness of that when you reach the verse 11. Vow and pay unto the Lord thy God.
What you... Yes.
So our vow, the sacrament, the sacrifice that we make is from ancient tradition. Because we speak about a Nazarite vow. We speak about a separation movement of the Black House of Israel, how we should adorn our locks as something sacred and righteous. So it's something of an ancient tradition. As I said, the turban and robe.
So I see it as a sacrifice you have made for the benefit of all black people everywhere.
Exactly. And
that
political thing you're talking about, we're talking about the 4th of April 1961, the first mission to Africa.
There you go.
To deal with this thing of emancipation that was never handed us from 1834.
And would you say that is what that was culminated now, that effort culminated in the visit of the emperor?
Without any doubt.
Yeah. So
any doubt.
Maxine, you were saying something?
Tip my hat to you, sir.
That's it.
Because
Maxine,
you did it for us.
Oh, you were saying something, Max?
Yeah. No, I was...
Let's ask that question.
No, I was looking at the... Not just duality, because it's not two things, but the many layers that coincide in relation to February. Because what happened is that Jamaican music, as was stated, created many genres. However, it's a genre of the Rastafari culture of reggae that all Jamaican music, they don't say Jamaican music anymore, they say reggae. And so by calling all Jamaican music reggae, you have merged the culture of the Rastafari to be the predominant source
or indicator
of identity, even though the music has many
layers,
layers or colors.
Many colors of it, sister.
Many colors of it, So there was issues with calling February Reggae Month, even when February was being called Reggae Month, because they said they already had an International Reggae Day for July 1st.
In another month.
In another month. And one of the biggest festivals in reggae, whether it was
In
Sunsplash
Jamaica,
and or
right.
Sumfest,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
also July. And so ones were like, okay, why is February focused on was because of the birthday of Bob Marley, who, along with the word reggae, has come to dominate the whole architecture of the music, and people didn't want that to happen either for this very varied art form to be not
be
expressed,
overwhelmed
to be
by just
overwhelmed
one.
by it. On the other side, the Rastafari community and culture is also being overwhelmed by the taking of reggae to be called everything.
Yes,
Because
that
now you're calling reggae gospel, reggae, reggae is now being used to describe a lot of non-Rastafari products, services, and ideas. So it is, it's all of that controversy. And within a month, you can't they can't cover everything, that it became important for the Rastafari to develop its own month, because we were actually being destroyed. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't even see, there wasn't even a day that could be taken out to say we are celebrating Rastafari culture
yes,
in
in February.
in February,
Yeah.
other than Bob Marley's,
His birthday.
efforts. So
Yeah.
the closing in of the reality, you understand what I'm saying, is that there was a necessity to build another month
Can I
for
ask-
the Rastafari.
Can I ask you both a question? All right. So reggae came out of Rasta.
Oh, Jamaican music really came out of Rasta, because ska was built around Count Ozzy and the Rastafari camp in East Kingston.
Mhm.
That's where the Alpha musician.
All right, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. If we were recording the conversation that
Oh, my.
ensued in the break, you would all be edified, and maybe everybody would become Rasta too. The Prophet was exercising his office. I think he has an appointment with Pastor Percival for them to walk scripture together, right, Pastor Percy?
That is so.
Yes.
We're looking forward to that,
the
definitely.
little bit of time we have here this morning can't cover all grounds.
Not going to cover.
Maxine was about to answer a question concerning ownership or influence of over the music. You still want to go to that?
Yeah,
You think
because
persons are sitting at the edge of their chair?
somebody, because somebody just called me, and this is one of our listeners, and she was trying to call in. She says, "Why I asked that question in terms of who owns the music?" Her point was that reggae music was being played before you saw the emergence of Rastamen promoting it. Because she said she calls it reggae music was there before. Now you pointed to Count Basie in the East and the
Count Ozzy.
It was
Count
Count
Basie.
Basie.
That's another person.
Another
that-
jazz
yeah,
musician.
Yeah. So Count
Count
Oz-
Basie, actually.
Yeah. So I wanted for you just to, as I was probing and we spoke about in the break, just to answer the question: who owns the music? The importance of reggae to Rastafari. Is it synonymous
Synonymous.
in terms of that? So we were the
Yes, and your caller hit the nail on the head just by her wanting to know, you know what I mean, that reggae music existed before the Rastafari artists,
emerged.
exemplified as the Wailers, because they were the most prominent visibility of this conversion. And as Prophet Greg said, you can see the conversion within the music, right? Because they came together in the 60s, and they were surrounded by the Scatterlights, who are the
Yeah.
representation and identity of the
So,
ska,
ska.
right? and the majority of the Scatolites are Rastafarians. You understand? Because, like I said, that duality of them in Walker Hills and Alpha in East Kingston. You understand what I'm saying? It was that identity energy. But the point is that because this popularity of the Rastafari personalities in the Jamaican music, exemplified in Bob Marley and his brethren, his trio, right, of Peter and Bunny, the idea that their popularity in the world and the music that they were espousing at the heights of their popularity being linked with the overthrow of, colonial type governments or black people freedom, etc. That is what they were heralded as.
Welcome back to the Morning Connection. We wanted your spirit to get juiced up with some provocative music, special requests by the Prophet himself. So you would have heard some insightful music war. But I promise that I'll take one for the team, and when we return, I would expose my own ignorance as the platform for furthering the discussion about this music, which is certainly a gift to the world, Jamaica's gift to the world. So says the United Nations, confirming what we already knew. So I was saying that as a child, I grew up hearing the word Delco being used as generators. Later in life, I realized that a generator was not called a Delco. Delco was a brand that was so popular. Similarly, you would have on nail polish and somebody would say, oh, you're wearing Q-Tex. And I thought all nail polish was called Q-Tex. Many people did. And we still have other words, like you say, are you going to Xerox something to copy it? Or there are words that have come into common usage because of the appeal and the dominance of the brand. Yeah. So it is with our music. It's been called reggae because a particular influence was so strong, so overwhelming, that it just became known as reggae music. There is a reason for it, though. I don't know who will tell us
Maxine,
about the policy and the laziness. That word was actually used. It came about, though, because of certain approaches taken by our very own government, wouldn't you say, Miss Maxine?
Yes, well, the owner of Delco or the owner of Q-Tex, they may feel, well, my brand is being more promoted than the other generator.
And they might even encourage it.
But we don't own reggae as Rastafari, because we would have said, oh, that's a benefit to us because our brand is being promoted above all. So the clash that we have is that now, not only for ourselves as Rastafari, but the world has moved to the knowledge economy. And so your knowledge and what you created now has more value than it had in 1960 or, So you're in a new world where you are being told, not just you felt all the while that you were being appropriated, but now there are laws. You understand that
to prevent it
and to encourage you to understand the value of your own intellectual properties before it even come out of your mouth. And in terms of traditional cultures, etc., laws now to get back and reclaim your rights. So
economic inclusion.
So all of this discussion is not just fanciful. It is because we're in a new age. And as I said yesterday, the Prime Minister, in talking about the economic development of the country, in his speech with the Rwandan
Paul
Kagame, directly said that the cultural and musical output of the country is a major economic activity that they haven't figured out how to monetize.
I could practically
right? So that is the same discussion that we're having here now. What is the reason? It's not a matter of reason. Yeah, it's a solution. What is the research that we're going to have to do and present? They mentioned the Madrid Protocol. Oh, we have to brand everything now going forward.
Geographic indicators.
But what about the things that have already occurred in the
God through the
world.
gate.
Yes.
How do we deal with that? That is why JIPO, the Jamaica Intellectual Property Office, is one of the most hated agencies now. Nobody didn't care about JIPO before. But JIPO, what is JIPO doing? Is JIPO protecting me?
Yes.
Is JIPO this, JIPO that? I mean, ganja is falling down because of the lack of understanding, or not understanding rules, policies, etc., about the intellectual property within ganja. It's the same thing with the reggae. Oh, Rasta feel like them own ganja. You understand? Like, ganja should be all about Rasta and only Rasta. But what the Rastafari are clamoring for is what is their intellectual property value in the ganja as it becomes an industry. How is that protected? Is that going to be the same thing that with the music? We have to be fighting another war? You know what I mean?
And then, of interest, it was in 1966 that the United Nations made its declaration on economic and social and cultural rights. 1966 is not yesterday. So from as far back as 1966, the world knew that these rights uniquely belong to the people from whom they originate, and in the customary way, domestic laws and a framework should have been in place to make those rights actionable or to give value to them. So for a long time, we have known that these rights are a part of the essential freedoms that people enjoy. But we have done nothing
Right,
to make it put it within the reach
Yes.
of the people.
Yeah,
And-
because
and-
it would have to be within the Constitution, as he's saying, as we go forward. You have countries that you can't pick up nothing because it's part of their Constitution, that stone or that tree
You
is
can't
valuable.
leave-
You
you can't
can't
leave the
leave with
country
country
with
with
it.
it. You
And-
understand? So supposing you said, no, this music, this culture, this way you cook food, jerk, whatever, this way that you do things are uniquely
Jamaican.
belonging to us. Therefore, if it appears anywhere in trade and
You have
commerce,
to pay with fees.
You have to
you
pay
have
a
to pay us
toll.
a toll.
We're still locked into this bad wine of colonialism, and that has to be purged out, because realistically, when the dismantling of the Berlin people, League of Nations,
1884, yeah.
the League of Nations formed the covenant of that. It is the human rights that came forth in 1948, and literally Article 27 speaks that you own what you create. Your economics surrounding scientific and cultural development. That is where WIPO became, developed out of the ownership of these rights, your
But
fundamental
not-
human
but
rights.
really not for the benefit of the colonial subjects.
No, that is what I'm saying, because
Because-
the dismantling of the colonial subject is the evidence of the removal of the League of Nations, because here now the United Nations recognize the independence of those former colonies now become separated. Only the problem is the bad wine linger when you keep on
I
these.
mean, we're still drunk from bad wine.
Yeah, because the
So we don't
constitution
even
of monarchy is
realize-
still the queen.
Yeah.
And if you don't take up your indigenous rights, that puts your identity before colonialism, because that's what you're doing. You're moving
You're
yourself
resetting, going back
yeah,
to the
from
factory setting.
conditions that ill prepare you. So the reset button, as always in Imperial Majesty, if you look at the speech that he did at the inauguration of the OA, he speaks about it in the language of a rebirth, and spiritually you look at that as a baptism,
Let me
a
ask you a
reborn.
question, Prophet Greg, on this issue, because I think many persons are attracted to the idea of increased and strengthened ties with Africa. I certainly am. But in my own way of thinking, I am not now going to be subject to another master in another country. In my way of thinking, I want the relationship, but I don't want it to be by force of law or by virtue of a constitutional mandate where Victoria or Elizabeth goes, where Elizabeth goes and an emperor from a country that I don't know, whose language I don't speak, is put there. What do you think it should mean as a practical matter if we were to take out Elizabeth and put in the emperor? What would it mean practically?
Yeah,
on
man. The
ground?
significance of it is reflected in 1966 speech that he did to the parliament, because in that speech, in reclaiming all African descendants as bloodline, he offered Jamaica to be a part of the OAU. So there was a economic, not only a political adjournment, but the economics that comes with it.
No, that part I understand.
No, but
because
that's
I can claim that by consent and by just, contractual relationships. But would I, for example, be saying, God save the emperor? We used to say, God save the queen. Would we be saying, God save the emperor? Would we need to configure state arrangements and commitments around what the emperor says? Would he be sending us a Christmas speech?
No.
As a practical matter, are we now aligning ourselves politically and philosophically with a new master?
All right.
That's my question.
No, all right. I'm just relating it. Just like how the Queen of England was a figurative head.
Mm-hmm.
You want to project the freedom, the emancipation, your identity as African majority people with that of the emperor in his visit. That is written in the parliament based on his speech. So you're using that as a symbolic aspect of your freedom. But what comes with it is the proposal of you integrating your birthright.
Enjoy your birthright.
Because look at it, economically speaking. If you're now trading and you're talking about Jamaicans and the diaspora in trading and how you can extend yourself with remittance, how greater that is now when you link back to your ancestry. If your descendants you're linking in, as
truthfully,
it will widen it. It will widen.
But it's very interesting, the visit of the Rwandan leader.
Yes.
It's in April, right?
yes.
Right, a couple days ago,
we
right?
create a forum for Africans.
Because as much as he has his own foibles in relation to the Commonwealth and his relationship to Britain and something he did the other day, which I don't fully understand.
Yes, that arrangement.
That arrangement to take refugees and stuff.
And but process them for 160
putting that
million
aside,
pounds.
When what he spoke about, he came directly to lay the wreath at the feet of Marcus Garvey. He came directly there, right? And then his speech was about getting rid of the middleman, which is Europe, and having Africa and the Caribbean have direct relations. That was his headline. You understand? So outside of the noise related to the Commonwealth and Jamaica's, in fact, in looking at the visit, Jamaica's interest in his visit was different from his interest in his visit. He had a message that was clearly about Africa, Caribbean connections,
trade, and
the same message that His Imperial Majesty came here with.
Yes, and the same message of Rasta, and the same message of the morning connection. Because we've been saying it.
You understand? So even as he was speaking a while ago, I said, but wait a minute. We had an African leader here last week. And what was the headline wasn't, even though this other noise was there, him himself, if you watch the man, and what he physically did, and what he physically said and spoke to the people, it was about Africans connecting directly.
Family.
You understand? Family. And not going through
the
Europe
middleman.
And the middleman, which he identified.
A middleman who should not be trusted. Doesn't have a relationship of trust.
Is there any significance in the fact that when Haile Selassie visited us in 1966, it was a Thursday and it was the 21st?
And it was what?
Thursday on the 21st of April. Pastor, you're gone deep. Today's Thursday and today's the 21st. Prophet Greg, you give us that one. It's filled with spiritual meaning.
I think it's just a matter of, because we burn coincidence, It's a real spiritual reconnection.
Yeah.
That the language of embracing your identity is now being more and more interrogated. As I said before, the morning connection, I give thanks that you took this bold initiative. And
I didn't know it was bold.
Very. I'm telling you, because if you ever go into the history, if I start read some things out of what came out of the British Secretary revealing the secrets that what they have against Rastafari, you will see why I'm saying these things. It is not a simple, it may seem courageous in your spirit because that's how you're moving. But the reality behind it, as we were talking about the proposal for the industry for reggae, if you understand me, and we see it clearly in the ganja. I'm now sitting on an economic inclusion task force as even a former director of the CLA, trying to get Rastafari to be included in some. I mean, with reggae, if you're going to ratio it and say in one in every five, or five in every five Rastafari would probably be affiliated with reggae. But when it comes to ganja, they talk about they had to make a statement and a law recognizing ganja as Rastafari sacrament. But are the priests recognized with the law? That is the problem.
But it's interesting you bring up that, because I went and I Googled what was happening with the ganja in 1930 around the coronation event and that whole sparking of the community to see what was the relationship of the Leonard Howell and those early Rastafari with the ganja. And it was interesting that it was in the 1930s that it was about to be with a particular act, 1936 act in America, where it criminalized the medicinal values, etc., of the ganja, meaning in 1930 it was not, in the American context, it was not criminalized, so therefore it was being used in the tea rooms and whatever. So Leonard Howell, in bringing it as an industry in relation to Pinnacle and the use of it, he wouldn't have had that.
You wouldn't think he was breaking a
law, like it was really
or being risky.
No, I'm looking at the sacramental. Like the sacramental came in to protect an industrial idea. You understand what I'm saying? Our idea that this is has economic activity, has medicinal activity, all of these things, So I said, that's interesting. That even as we're looking at it as sacrament, and that's something that came to us as we were doing this, that we as Rastafari would have to be dealing with both the industrial and the sacramental, because it didn't start with sacramental. There was a freedom, as you spoke yesterday, in our involvement with it as a community. Sacrament came as a way to protect the industrial.
That's an interesting argument.
You understand what I'm saying? Because sacrament has been there from the plant exists. It exists as a psychoactive agent to do the same separation of. No, it's the same separation of church and state that I'm reading, the duality. That you have a material and then you have something that take you into the spiritual, back into the material. Some people want you to be in the material because they want their labor. You understand? They don't want you to
be unavailable. Not here for work. I'm meditating. I'm in a trance.
I want to emphasize based on what I was just saying, and even to link it up with what Sister Maxine had just said, but in the sense of the reality that we are encountering. That's why I say it's a bold step towards individuals who take on African liberation. And this is a speech that the Emperor delivered at the inauguration of the OAU in I think it was May next in 1963. He said Africa was a physical resource to be exploited, and Africans were chattels to be purchased bodily, or at best peoples to be reduced to vassalage and lackeyhood. Africa was the market for the produce of other nations and the source of the raw materials with which their factories were fed. Today, Africa has emerged from the dark passage, or Armageddon is past. Africa has been reborn as a free continent, and Africans have been reborn as free men. The blood that was shed and the sufferings that were endured are today's Africa's advocacies for freedom and unity. Those men, those Africans who refused to accept the judgment passed upon them by the colonizers, who held unswervingly through the darkest hours to a vision of an Africa emancipated from political, economic, and spiritual domination will be remembered and revered wherever Africans meet. So you see this loftiness about the recapturing of the holistic approach spiritually, economically, politically. It is the whole holistic revelation that the Emperor said that we need to relinquish ourselves to be truly recognized as free beings coming out of the era of colonialism and slavery. So the freedom that you were talking about with even the spiritualists that Ganja bring as an industry, the struggle that we have to incorporate the black man economics, as though Marcus Garvey was being targeted for Pan-Africanism, it is a reality. So don't think when I'm saying this to you, the host, of what you're doing here, it's something simple. It is something that, trust me, you're shaking the foundation. And look at the elevation. You're talking to be remembered and to be revered. This is sainthood, elevations to the heights,
Saint Percy.
In the sense of you
Saint Bess.
You're
Saint Bess.
yes.
We're going with Saint
You're
Bess.
re-elevating Africans to that position when the Europeans only give saints to white people.
They're black saints, man.
And this is the reality of returning to your birthright, the reborn, by eliminating the bad wine of colonialism. Yeah, man.
Full detox.
Yeah. So we understand it. So Max, based on what you have said then, using the analogy that Minette opened with, and how they have designated reggae music, you think Rastafarian has had a major influence on it, but you are saying it is not the only music there is that has come out of Jamaica.
No, definitely not. My uncle is Clement Sir Coxon Dodd. So I am uniquely aware of the personalities and the influences. His company had he had gospel music, he had jazz, he had Jamaicans were influential in a lot of spheres. Some of the greatest influencers of jazz music were Jamaicans that went into England and became parts of jazz groups. Jazz came here to Jamaica. Lloyd Brevett's father made the bass drum. He didn't invent it, but bass drums were made here.
Okay.
Not bass drums, bass guitars.
Okay.
You understand? And when you hear about, Headley, was it Headley Jones? That made the first electric guitar, developed the sound system. There are a lot of innovative aspects and innovators, all of them majoritively black, who are also not celebrated. My uncle is not celebrated, even though he's the pioneer of the blueprint of Jamaican music. Even Bob Marley and the Wailers came out of his home. So I understand clearly what that it's not Rastafari that own anything, but the influence and the fact that Rastafari are a uniquely oppressed section of the the larger society.
Yes.
And have created this culture that is worth a lot and was transmitted through the music. Then you have to focus in and say, no, you can't use that, and then don't give me my rights. All right, you're using reggae, I understand that. But how am I protected and how am I benefiting from this?
Yeah.
This is what the clamoring is about.
I want to raise an issue with Prophet Greg. It looks like we're going to need a part 2, but I want to raise an issue with you. We talked about the Rastafarian faith being embedded in a vow, a covenant. I look at it myself and I see the simple life, the Nazarite part of it, not cutting the hair and so on. There are some ways in which the full economic benefits of the exploitation of your culture may or may not interfere with that culture, that lifestyle. Um, how do you incorporate technology, current trendy innovations? Is Rasta? I'm asking a question.
You're
that
asking
is
a question.
difficult to formulate.
No, you ask a question.
Because I don't
Leave
want
it
to
to
be
them as we go
offensive
to
in
the
asking
break.
it.
So we go
Oh,
on the
it's time
break.
for the break?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so the question is,
Yeah.
how does Rasta embrace modern and current trends and thinking and not be polluted? Let me borrow from James. Not be polluted by the things of the world. When the wealth comes in, and there is wealth, how do you see it affecting the culture, the faith, the practices?
Okay.
So we're taking our break now? Okay. Welcome back to the Morning Connection. We're getting into the last stretch of the morning, and it's been an exciting conversation. Some of the greater excitement, I have to tell you, has been off screen, so to speak. But nonetheless, I had posed a question. It's a question about modernity or modernizing.
Within the moment. Well,
Yes.
as the speech, as you indicate with the speech, we're looking at a rebirth of the energies coming out of that era where we now have to build out, because that is what is being attacked. Musically, etc. This is the culture, the brand value. There's no value. So if we are going to develop, you can use aspect of what is there. For instance, I don't recall it as yet, but in dealing with literature books, you can use the same ebook. In dealing with the cultural aspect, we are just coming out of a museum exhibition on Rastafari. These are virtual creativities that can be done virtually as well to export that as an economic value. So as we develop, the word that is in pure majesty that had instruction has become prophetic. We need to organize and centralize. And I'm certainly the instrument that comes with it, the development of a people's right, a people's culture. It is hinged upon three fundamental categories. You have to have a competent authority structure in representing
Rights of the people.
that rights of the people. You have to have mandatory benefit sharing going forward, but most importantly, in working with the partnership between that community and the state, there must be prior informed consent.
Okay.
And that is where the breakdown is now in developing the rise in the governance and the wealth of the community, because this vast amount of wealth that has been created from Rastafari has to be governed, has to be owned by the community, and the benefits must be tangibly
accrued to them so they can do- so you can
exactly.
lift them up.
So even in the language of modern development, the same concept can be utilized with the same way how you can envision strategies in how you can advance your cultural development.
Okay.
As I said before, we have done these work within the council's permit, but what we want to see come on board is the partnership and the recognition and empowerment that the government should be doing in addressing the governance and the development of the Rastafari community. And hence, in creating a council by Roger Chenez, and as how we are now, there was also an NGO creation of a Rastafari trust fund that should have been the centralizing instrument to hone in and accumulate the benefit sharing for the Rastafari community.
Maxine? That was a mouthful, wasn't it? But I like the 3-point thing that he pointed out in terms of moving forward.
Well, yes, competent authority. What was the second one? The
Benefit
Shared
sharing
benefit.
shared benefit
and then the prior informed consent.
and the prior informed consent. Well, the competent authority is what we have been struggling with since 2007, because that competent authority by law comes through the custodians of the culture, which is the ancient council, right? So though we are activating, we are working for our work that we are expressing here, and our ideas are on behalf of the ancient council of the Rastafari community. And the centralized and organized is also under the ancient council. And this is not just organically now. We have met now with international best practices and laws coming down that any law coming on behalf of the Rastafari community must be centered around the ancient council and their, I don't want to say views, but their livity.
So the doctrine comes from them, really.
Because and it's a reality. It's
Yeah.
they are the custodians. They are the literal creators. Because it's not that you want to move past the His Imperial Majesty and his learnings and all of that. But in reality, when we're facing law, government,
You must have a
policy,
structure.
it has to come through
Exactly.
the ancients
Right.
who actually lived this trod and made all of these rules, the Nyabingi guidelines, the parliamentary, what you'd call out of the office of the president, Representative Sylvia Kalonji.
So you
had
are right
elicited.
now ahead of the British government because they have no written constitution, but you have documented structures, doctrines, principles that embody both the philosophical or spiritual and the political. And there are some offices that fall out of that whole narrative. The office of the president, Sizzla Kalonji was here with us. That is one of the offices that comes out of it. Prophet Greg's office as a prophet, operating in the office of a prophet spiritually,
but within a
also
specific
within
mansion,
a council that
Right.
is specific.
Just one thing, he said something that a lot of people, the ancient council constitute of all the mansions.
all the mansions. The largest of them is the Nyabingi Ancient Council, because
Okay.
it's a Nyabingi order that several mansions emanated
Broke away
out of.
from.
Not broke away, because that's
what we say
that's
in the church.
That's
It happens as human beings. Let me tell you something. Wanna go on like
No, but I
I-
see your
you know,
start.
I- you-
Who is
wanna-
Uno?
I see your
wanna
start.
go on like in
Uno
Rasta
Rastas.
community. There's
Uno
not
Rastas.
it's
No,
not
man,
this unity.
it
It's
is a
true.
very serious.
Yeah, man, because it
Yeah.
came out
Because it's
because
impacting as we speak.
it's
trust
a
me.
man, you know. We're all man. We're not God, and so we do things that we figure.
We are
say,
God.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we're not going to work out. No, man. Let us.
yeah, I know. I'm
Yeah, trouble me as per usual. But,
Trouble Percy.
But that's why I wanted,
Yeah.
because when you said ancient councils, the ancient council consists of the different mansions.
Yeah.
Well,
you have
the
a-
ancient
yeah.
council
Yeah.
was why I
It started as
calculate
one,
that
she said.
it started as one, the Assembly of
Nyabingi.
Elders,
Okay. So
right?
the assembly-
And they're still the Assembly of Elders, because historically and heritage-wise, they still exist. It still exists.
okay.
So King Emmanuel doesn't have a reference point except out of the
Nyabingi,
Assembly of Elders and the Nyabingi order.
Yes.
You understand what I'm
Yes,
saying?
yes,
Bongo
yes.
Water, they don't have a, they're not individuals. They're being inspired to congregate and,
And,
So they started as one family,
and they still are.
and but family have children, and some move away, and some set up their own house. But you're still family. You're now
You're
extended.
still the council of, if you want to say, it's the council of the churches that
We're just trying
emanate out
to
of.
It's,
No,
it's,
no, I
it's,
understand.
it's basically the impact of the mission for liberation. Because if you look at even history, as I was mentioning before, just pick a date, 1954. You look at this now, 1954, the last ship that returned indentured servants to India, that was in 1954. But 1954 was also the time where they destroyed Pinnacle and the commune setting that was there.
Okay.
So all of that came down into Bakawal. So when this propagation about Federation 56 coming up for now, the whole Western Development Federation caused that whole new order, because that's when the first time the Nyabingi order was displayed. Over 3,000 races now come together and say, no, this matter of independence, emancipation, the federation, you still have to go deal with repatriation and the act. So the whole mission that the whole creed of Rastafari incorporates itself is surrounded from that fundamental continuity that developed from 1950. Albeit though, this is when the Nyabingi order that the identity now, specifically coming, the end grain of the spirituality that Rastafari rose with, is where now the centerpiece, the centerfold, took on again and continue to this day, because this is what exists continually now from the development from 1958. So obviously within differences, you will see the different, but the centerpiece of the order is where the mansions seated, where the indigenous faith and culture is seated, because within the 12 tribe, as a one of the major group, they accede to the Ethiopian Orthodox to the church.
Yeah.
So they are not really affiliated with the, as I said, the indigenous rise of the ancients them, but rose that order within the Bakawal movement and thing. As I said,
so what
from
I'm
that
hearing
time.
is that one family, tensions arose and man set up his own shop, but it still all points back to the
that.
same base.
All points back.
So what is representative of that base today? Is it the office of the president?
Yes, I would say that, because a lot of, especially because of the, we are at a crossroads of transition, human transition, physical transition, where a significant portion of the elders have died. Significant ones still remain. So because when I review the constitution that was developed in 2007 for the community, it is stratified in that way. There's an office of the Ancient Council, and even the actions of the Millennium Council and so on and so forth is under that. It has to go back there. So there's been a struggle to define and to seat the Ancient Council, which is why for me personally the office of the president is important now, because that was ordained by the ancients at a particular juncture that has to do with the work that we have been defending. You understand?
Yes,
It cannot be picked apart because of that organic link. We did nothing without the ancients. Everything, every activity that we did, or we said we're proposing this for the ganja or whatever, we have to go before the government with all the ancients seated with us. We couldn't get up and like, okay, we have this idea, this should go this way. You understand? The ancients had to be with us all the way.
So they were actually physically there with you when we were making the
every meeting.
Oh wow.
Every meeting.
So many people constitute
at that point
ancient.
I would say there's a core of about 15 of them.
Okay.
Maybe by now there's like I would say maybe 5 of that activist core, because you have ancients all over the country, you know. And this ancient council is not, there's also another layer to it as to the ones who can actually move.
Okay.
You understand? A lot of times you have to go to them, because even their physical ability to move economically, etc., it is very constrained. That is part of the problem that I see with the organized and centralized, and why it was important to set up the trust and all of this, so that the mechanism could work at its highest potential.
You became wise according to the workings of the world.
Say that?
You became wise according to the workings of the world.
And the world is...
Yes, and because the truth is, Jesus says you have to become what?
Use the wisdom of the world to...
Wise as serpents.
Yes, in acknowledging what is necessary, because there is a de-link between the state and the development of the community. So such an arrangement of trying to recaptivate what had started in 1958 as a collective force towards the mission, and because of the splintering that is happening, and as the bad wine that is setting in, even to cause further division, that relationship between the office of the presidency and what the council has established as work has to come to a meeting ground where we can galvanize now what the mission of the Rastafari should move to accomplish. Because right now that is a big question, because if you ask about mission, I mean, I don't really want to sound, but when people ask about what is the creed of Rastafari, you say, boy, the hungry be fed. No, that's the benevolence of the creed. The popularized version what is a part of it begins with prince and princesses shall tread out of Egypt, which is the house of bondage. We Ethiopians shall
Freedom.
stretch forth our hand unto the Almighty. And then the
So the
benevolence
creed
comes
is
to
freedom.
Exactly, because the actual from 58 creed, from the King Emmanuel era, began with, they speak about the Godhead. Yeah, I seen.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead. No worry. It's not going to accompany you.
It will rise again.
Till rise again, as we all rise.
Yeah, and them say we glorify the Father, of the creation, and then you have the second verse to the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and then the third stanza is when you say Prince and Princess shall tread out. So there's a holistic.
The creed is a combination of spirituality, politics, and a bid for freedom. And that continues to be
holistic.
so,
When His
really.
Imperial Majesty spoke about political, economic, and spiritual domination that we must remove out of, and these people shall be remembered and revered wherever African meet. You're talking about that upliftment of the setting and the creed, the foundation of the creed is what identifies these three holistic aspects
So-
of bringing the mission into
Alright,
that
so
fruition of movement.
I'm gonna just put another
down.
question to you because, you can come together around a common cause.
Exactly.
And when you succeed with that cause, you are still together, but your focus needs to
Focus on different things.
shift to accord with current realities. Yesterday, Sister Maxine spoke to at the Jacana event, or the 420 event, let's call it that. And she said, we have won the war, we must now claim the spoils.
It has been our team
And
consistently.
there is a need to focus your energies now on claiming the spoils. I want to hear about the governance structure under which you seek now to claim the spoils,
And disperse
administer
it.
it in accordance with the benevolence
Yeah, man.
approach of the creed, the
Our-
sharing
our
of
creed
benefits.
is first and foremost to the Almighty. Glory be unto the Father, the Son, and the
Yes.
Holy One of creation. So we see the
So we have to. So you're saying then
holistic.
we have to support church,
Have to be.
and we have to support people, feed the hungry,
Exactly,
clothe the
the
naked.
benevolent, the whole.
There is a structure under which all of that needs to be done, which would become the government. Then, what would you share on that subject?
Well, that blueprint has already been laid out by the ancients. They actually, when I look at all the
Documentation.
paperwork that has been put forward by the guidelines by the Royal Judah Coptic Church and by the EABIC, I see the governance structure fully laid out.
EABIC.
Sorry, Ethio-Africa Black International Congress. You understand? And all three ideas come from the Assembly of Elders. They're all emanating from the Ancient Council. So what we are trying to, what we have to implement is those amalgamation, you understand, into a structure which goes with the international indigenous.
So those declarations are useful to give you a guideline or a framework.
A framework
to
to
make-
not be opposed by the state.
Precisely, because the state is a signatory to
It's
those
signatory,
treaties
and they have been
yeah.
opposed to this governance over the period, and potentially this governance is the alternative government that has existed alongside them. You understand? Without them, they say Rastafari is not involved in politics, but the life of the Rastafari is a political choice. You understand? You're not
Absolutely.
involved in,
Yes.
in politics, but you have decided
You're
to
not involved in the colonial, Eurocentric shaped politics that has overwhelmed us.
Right,
A
and you
politics
have
led
to-
by the minority, by the way.
Exactly, and you have freedom, redemption, repatriation, and reparation. It's a government.
Yes, it is.
You understand what I'm
It is.
saying? So it's a government that says, okay, our principles, just like that African leader last week said, we want direct relations between Africa and yourselves. That was His Imperial Majesty's Um,
1966.
not just 1961. That is the cry, and so which government of Jamaica is going to appreciate and activate that?
those, right?
You understand? And the world has moved to South-South trade, etc. So it's not an emotional
not
connection.
fanciful
It's
and
not
unattainable
fanciful
at this point.
No, because the
It
leaders
makes a whole
are
lot of sense.
and the leaders are coming here, and even though they're going to other Caribbean islands, and there's a seat in physically in Guyana for CARICOM, it is Jamaica
That they're reaching out to.
that they have to come to, not reaching
Well,
out.
I loved the fact that they've said people to people exchange, because I spoke on freedom yesterday, and the point that I emphasize all the time, I just want to repeat it here, is that we too often we ask for permission to do something which is our right.
Right.
We need no permission. We don't need to ask. We just need to organize the resources to do it. And now that Africa is as willing as its children are to be reunited, I don't see anything except just the hard work of making it operational.
Well, look, there's a South Africa Jamaica bilateral that was in place prior, and that we engaged under this ganja industrial scenario, where they say law pass or something happening.
Yes.
And we saw where all the mechanisms were there. That's how we registered the company Rasta Ganja Global. We had the idea here. Under the bilateral, we were able to register it in South Africa. And it's actually the registration in South Africa that assisted for the registration here.
In Jamaica.
You understand? So that is showing us the bilateralism, Jamaica,
and the potential for
and
success.
the potential for
actually.
success. So we have the largest Rastafari community in the world, driven by the music. It was created by the music in South Africa. Is now our economic development partner. You understand? And so you see the seeds of it under the bilateral, but you also saw and met the state interference. You understand?
Is there anything that you require from the state now that is essential to the success of the
for
current
them
mission?
to at the
That's essential.
what is essential is their acknowledgement and their non-interference of just the actual thing that's supposed to happen. The man Kagame also spoke about people-to-people contact. So we're the folk people, not just the people at UWI, not just the civil servants,
the real
not
people.
just the right.
I call them
That
the real people.
we need to be in charge of that connection and of that influence and of that industry, and need to be facilitated.
Are you set up to accomplish that as at this moment? Are you set-
Definitely, because we saw it in practice with the South Africa bilateral, and right now the Office of the President with Sizzler is making those same considerations now under the Ethiopia-Jamaica bilateral, that we have not functioned as much as what we engaged under the South Africa bilateral. So
and many persons might be thinking that because Rastafari embrace the simple life, they're uneducated. Would you please correct that? Should anyone be thinking that?
no, but we are a government, and we couldn't be uneducated if we weren't a government. You understand? And if they clamor to Leonard Howell as a founder, if they clamor to it because it was several personalities that were inspired by the coronation and that whole effect that pulled people from all over together, but these were all leaders of business, of existing churches, of associations. They didn't fall out of some tree. You understand what I'm saying?
And
You understand?
What you're saying
And you
is-
can't organize if
These
you
are
don't have
thought
intelligence.
organizers. You couldn't. This faith and this movement couldn't be organized other than thinkers.
Exactly.
We are thinkers. Why are we here? Why are we pushing against?
And even the dialogue that we're having, I think it is revealing the depth of scholarship, the excellence of the spiritual maturity, and the preparedness
And the
to push
attractiveness
against the oh, it
for
has yeah.
to attract intelligent people.
Yeah.
Because they don't, that's the whole thing. If it wasn't intelligent, it could not attract intelligence.
And
You
if it,
understand? So
and
it's
if it-
naturally
Well,
intelligent.
I think
and if it didn't have any value, it wouldn't have been misappropriated.
well, obviously nobody
Wow.
steals what is worthless.
So what
But
you're
we spoke a few weeks ago. We were speaking about an issue that is kind of coming up now. The fact that in the exercise of these freedoms, persons will draw to them the minds and the abilities that are needed to extend the life, and the fact that you have survived for all these years and you have grown more internationally maybe than even locally is testament to the intrinsic value of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Percy. Sorry.
I was just commenting on the fact that when you see the community represented, the different mansions, people think his people are uneducated, but that is not so. Just to state that categorically, because when the president was here, the amount
Volume.
of papers that I saw him referring to and thing, which means that a lot of thought and work has gone into where they are at and where they need to go. I think the challenge now that faces the community at large here in Jamaica is that you've struggled for a long time to get recognition. But having gotten the recognition, I remember the first time we spoke, Maxine, you need the economic power, and that is where the blockage is. That needs to be removed, that indeed you can truly reap the economic rewards, that you can indeed help the wider community. Not a few people, but everybody, which speaks of kingdom,
All right,
incidentally.
we're at the break. I just wanted you to close that. Perhaps when we come back, Prophet Greg, you can start with what you have in your hand.
Okay.
Because we have to take a station break. It's 9:31. Welcome back. We are now in our final segment, so we have to keep it tight because there's still so much to be said. Our guests, as you know, are Prophet Greg and Sister Maxine Stowe. We are still celebrating Rastafarian Month. Before we took the break, we had asked a question about that really touched on showcasing the scholarship and the intelligence behind the workings of Rasta, the practices, and the documentation of who they are. Prophet Greg wants to emphasize something for us now that switches us a little bit more to looking at some of those bilateral arrangements that are operative today and from which Rasta and other Jamaicans really can benefit.
Yes, give thanks just a minute. There was an article in the Jamaica paper on February the 8th speaking about the Ethiopian ambassador to Jamaica, North America, and Mexico, Mr. Germa Bureau. But he was encouraging the ties, the closer ties, and they established a bilateral cooperation that include 5 categories: air transport, sports, culture, education, and tourism. Now, if you check 4 out of I would say 4 out of the 5, if we don't really look at the sports part, impacts the Rastafari culture and the relationship between the community and Ethiopia. 4 out of the 5 of them, these categories, if we put sports one side, directly impacts the culture. So the words of His Imperial Majesty when he spoke that we need to organize and centralize is now prophetic. Because even in repatriation, agitation, the AU is telling that there's too much splinter group, we need to organize ourselves. In Ganja, South Africa is telling us now there's too many groups, we need to organize ourselves. So, as Sister Maxine was saying, the whole energy towards the, linking in the close governance structure is what the real Mokain is needed right now.
Returning to the blueprint that the ancients provided.
Exactly, because that is what the council has done now in providing. What we want to see is the buy-in, the partnership that the government, the state must be responsible in dealing with competence authority, mandatory benefit sharing, prior informed consent. And that is the relationship that needs to be established with a council that was specifically set up to organize and
To deal with all of
centralize
those
and
matters.
flush out all of these protocols, and these are international protocols, and we're talking about even one named the Gaia protocol that speaks to what do you call it, nutraceuticals in that aspect.
All right, I am going to allow each person to wrap up the debate. I'm kidding, not a debate, but
The conversation.
the
That's what we're
conversation.
having.
The reasoning on the
reasoning.
56th anniversary visit of Emperor Haile Selassie I.
Yeah, Groundation
The
Day.
groundation
Foundation Day. Is there a potential for a future visit?
of the Emperor.
Yes.
Certainly, that is prophecy.
Yeah, that's true. You see a light up fire and say we are wrap up. Stop it. We have a next week Thursday. We'll talk about those.
Yes.
All right, so perhaps it's a good time to say what next in this month of celebration.
Well, the focus next week, today and for the following, it's still about the gathering of the minds of the community. Because that's what the Rastafari month is about. These events are naturally occurring. We're not creating events for Rastafari month. We're only umbrellaing them and bringing them to a point of mostly advocacy. Because, whether it's Coral Gardens, whether it's Ganja, whether it's the visit, next week, like I said, it's intellectual property rights because it's in intellectual property week.
Yeah.
And so we are looking forward now to, even with these programs, the community is listening, different, sectors of the community.
I met a few listeners yesterday.
They're listening, and so it's our responsibility now to gather these thinking minds to say, yes, well, what is the way forward? We have thrown down the gauntlet and said the way forward is through the Office of the President acting in concert with the Nyabingi Ancient Council mandates. You understand? And the government is aware of trends, that now need to be concretized into, and their policies even, because we learned through the issue with Iridex and the Bank of Jamaica that even what we knew as a practice note is now actually an act of the trademark.
It's been put
Act.
into the trademark
Right.
Act.
So we need to know where all of these other things are, and like what we said in yesterday, that with this removal of the Queen and what is to replace her, that just like how they set up a Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs to study on their part what they would like to see happen, we as community and on behalf of the African descendants of Jamaica have to do our own research and study.
May I say we are doing our
We are
own
doing
research and
yes, study.
because if you want to know why Best FM and the Morning Connection has taken a stand so proudly with you, it is a part of the research and study. We must know what it is that the people want, and we must advocate for it, and we must find the partners who are doing the same thing and becoming the voice of the people. We say we are the voice of the voiceless, so we gotta listen and pay attention and say it in the right places. So, thank you for giving me that plug.
Right. So, it's just work. We're at work.
Yeah, we're at work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're open for new members?
Well, we have all the members. We're open to organizing the members, and new members, yes, in terms of
Because
the
there
wider
is-
groups. But as
There
Rastafari,
is the church.
yeah, as Rastafari, my experience in terms of organized and centralized is that work has already been done. The interference with the work, you understand what I'm saying,
Yes.
is what we have to be
The bad wine.
studying. Is what we have to be studying, but there's nothing structurally or anything to do.
I'm gonna ask you. Percy is going to have words with me afterwards. But to a person who is considering the faith, what guidance would you give them? Someone who says, I like what the Rastas are doing. I want to join.
That is where we want to encourage even a national, although they have done it, but where policy is concerned, I think what we have done to initiate proactively Rastafari History Month, Rastafari Month, because as I said before, the storyline that impacts the culture are written in. So a person who seeks to enter into this faith will have more knowledge as he listen or she listen to. And of course, there are the mantras impact. But once you bring a focus on the importance of the narrative, because this is really the identity of the movement. Once we,
So
the
so
storyline
that's
and the protection.
So that's the education part of it.
so
You
coming
want
into the
persons to be
faith,
more educated.
a person who comes into the faith is like they will have to have their inborn initiative, just like in any Christianity. Some certain form of internal movement spiritually will drive that individual to seek truth, to seek knowledge, and hence usually what they end up doing is to familiarize themselves with the Rastafari, visit mansions, because there are mansions still in place. As a matter of fact, we are reaching in the part of organizing. One of the first important move that the council had made is to recognize Pinnacle as becoming a heritage site. So that is gaining the ownership of our culture, and hence we even made a proposal that all communes become heritage site, so we can move that ownership of culture and honing back that sort of community
possibly,
development.
the whole island is.
So it's an individual
No.
search.
I'm
Talking about like a Mecca, visit to Mecca. That's
no,
what you're
no. What
talking about.
what I'm going at is when the government in the Ganja bill says who is Rasta, because Rastafari is so pervasive. Remember, we're about going to 100 years. 2030 is 100 years. So 100 years of influence in a society where you didn't really have a particular place.
No headquarters.
No headquarters, except in the head of the quarter.
The real
That-
headquarters.
that mean you can't really control it.
No,
No.
you don't want to control it.
Okay.
You want it's the ultimate freedom. So
Organized
maybe
and
you wake up
centralized.
and realize that we have colonized Jamaica.
I'm Rasta. Well, Bongo Percy.
I'm not so sure about that, but we'll it is.
No,
You
no,
know,
no,
no.
No, listen. When they colonized Africa,
The Africans.
the Africa didn't know. You understand what I'm
but
saying?
you
So
know,
we may be
just
moving
wake
to
up
the
and
point.
As you say that, it is a point of real
Percy
humor.
want to say
Maybe
the
I'm in
blood of
charge.
Jesus.
No, I'm not going to say
Maybe
that.
I'm
Gonna say the
already.
blood of
No,
Jesus.
not maybe, because I don't want to give any maybe to myself. But
Yeah.
I think I'm already in charge. You understand? Because when I look at the problems of Jamaica and the solutions outside of the posturing, the solutions are within what we as a community represent.
Well,
You-
so says the Prime Minister, but he
As-
could be wrong.
You know, he's been known to be wrong.
But you always have a knack for opening up a can of worms, When you
Just
do
when
it,
the fish
you
are
just
leaving.
And when the fish are leaving, they open up a can of worms.
Oh
As I
my
says,
goodness.
we will continue to
Yes,
have
it is,
have
this is
interest in
excellent
this
fodder for round two.
of discussion
For
and
round
so
two.
on.
All right,
But
but
I was just going to, I am not going
No,
to stroke
man.
this fire. No. I'm
You
not
can
going to stroke
stoke
this
it
fire
after they
anymore.
leave.
No, man. No, because,
No, when we go off air, you can stoke the
I wa-
fire all you want.
I want to leave an
Or burn a
interesting
fire.
thing for pastors, Percy, because
Yes.
we're knocking brain. But realistically speaking, if we look at the prophecies and the struggle for freedom, it was a struggle to look for deliverance, just like in the days of Moses. And I'm telling you that spiritually, the churches, need to really read and study what Romans chapter 11 really bring to the table as a information and fulfillment of the coming of the deliverer of Zion that needs to be interrogated by churches. in Jamaica.
but we continue. So we have a message of deliverance, because as I said to a lot of people, a lot of things that happen, people seek to control minds. And it is a gospel that speaks to liberation and freedom.
Exactly.
That's why Jesus Christ came and he declared it. It is for freedom. That's why I came into the world. And he who knows him has truly been set free. So across different cultures out of Jamaica, across the world, that is why this gospel of the kingdom. Gospel of the kingdom. You speak of kingdom also. You
Yes.
speak of a king.
Exactly.
This gospel of the kingdom will be preached. And the end that you're speaking about, it will come. And then the thousand reign will be established.
Yeah, man.
Because then he will return in his kingly character, as my friend who is now dead, Garnet, still spoke about. Let me release that one on you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
And we will be there.
Yeah, man.
You will be there.
Yes,
Yeah,
Pastor will be there.
we
We'll
will
all be there.
we'll all be
So
there,
we
but
gotta
the question
figure out
is now how we gonna
how we're gonna get
get
there
there
as
as
one.
one, yeah.
Because there's a blueprint for that too.
Exactly, and we have to acknowledge the times because
Times and season.
yes, we are in the last days, moving to the last day, and this
I like what you
significance.
say, you know,
Yes,
sound
And the
like- it sound
beginning
like
of
a
the
big-
new.
yes,
new millennium.
yes, and the times of ending is the times of the Gentiles. 2022 AD is really the times of the Gentiles. So we're moving
coming,
with the
coming.
reality.
We're moving.
It will
All
their
right,
time will
um,
place and then the end will come. For a time.
Yeah.
Couple round.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
man.
gotta say thank you.
It's a pleasure.
It has been wonderful.
And my
and-
friend
and-
Maxine in all of her Joseph regalia. Yeah, the multicolored. The multicolored.
Yes.
You know that you are blessed and favored.
Oh yes, I'm
Prophesy
here.
to her, sir.
I'm here with the blesser.
We can't go wrong, Sister Maxine. We have
Oh,
two
my
priests at
Lord.
the table with us. A
one prophet, one
prophet and a priest.
And I'm a prophet and priest. I want to tell you about that. But
You're
anyway,
both. Which one are you?
all of them manifested because
so
the
we
Spirit of
blessed.
God is with us. Yeah, man.
Yeah, we're blessed.
Yeah, man.
We're highly.
And
favored.
prophetess. You remember,
Um,
see a prophetess?
Yeah. I was hoping you would forget.
And I thought we get that you're a
we
prophetess.
got to the end of the show. You only said it one time. We're going good. But thank you both. I think all of our listeners have been edified. I can say that without fear of contradiction, largely because what you have said has been good information and it's been thought-provoking. So who didn't think it's good information? It's been thought-provoking because it will cause them to think
Yes.
and to revisit some old pathways that are really in need of care.
Ancient ways.
And ancient ways, yes. I know I said old-fashioned.
The ancient
was to
paths
provoke
return
you.
to the ancient ways as Isaiah
Absolutely.
speaks about.
Yes, because he said those would be rebuilt.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And who gonna rebuild them except
And there
modern
must
day
be
people?
evidence.
And there must be evidence.
must be evidence.
Absolutely. So I thank you for sharing with me. We have another week or so to go. I'm looking forward to it. And then we have a visit to Judgment Yard. And we'll have the prophet with us. So thank you both, and thank you in the house, in the studio, online. Oh gosh, my online people didn't get much love today, but they've been sending lots of love your way. By the way, we get some special shout outs and greetings from a number of persons online. to
We've
both
never
the
seen
guests.
before.
Yes, one
Online.
or two new persons have shown up, and we've had.
I think it would be fair to say that the influence of Africa on the music has been highlighted here. It wasn't mentioned specifically for any period of time in the discussion because we were focusing on Rasta's impact on the music. But one or two persons have said, even on the slave ships, the music and the drumming and the humming and was a source of comfort, and the suffering that the music pulls out.
Yeah, man. Psalm 68.
Yeah, so thank you for that. You've dealt with the past, you've dealt with the now, and you've touched on the future, which
That's where
I
we're
think
going.
is bright and very promising. Please expect new applications for membership. so yeah.
So like she's getting it.
No, I mean, you did say prophetess, so I got to prophesy.
You understand?
But I think you're going to generate a lot of interest because people are still searching for understanding and a place where they can comfortably express their spirituality.
Yes.
And the way that you have combined economics, politics, and spirituality, I know it is attractive to many. It's attractive to me too, but I wouldn't grow the locks. Not sure.
We have the kingdom.
I would have to be one.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I leave
All
it
right,
at that.
thank you
So-
very much. We take our leave now. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thursday is the new Friday for us on the Morning Connection. So we wish you well, and God willing, we'll be with you again on Monday.